Kevin Izod O'Doherty was an Irish-Australian politician. Biography. O'Doherty was born in Dublin on 7 September 1823, although other sources including the Dictionary of Australasian Biography indicate he was born in June 1824, and Charles Gavan Duffy, in his My Life in Two Hemispheres, states that O'Doherty was still underage when he was arrested in July 1848. Gavan Duffy, however, was writing 50 years later. O'Doherty received a good education and studied medicine, but before he was qualified, joined the Young Ireland Party and in June 1848, together with Richard Alton Williams, established the Irish Tribune. Only 5 editions were issued, the first being on 10 June 1848. On 10 July 1848, when the 5th edition was issued, O'Doherty was arrested and charged with treason felony. At the first and second trials the juries disagreed, but at the third trial he was found guilty and sentenced to transportation for 10 years. O'Doherty arrived in Tasmania in November 1849, was at once released on parole to reside at Oatlands, and his professional services were utilised at St Mary's Hospital, Hobart. The other Irish prisoners nicknamed him St Kevin. In 1854 received a pardon with the condition that he must not reside in Great Britain or Ireland. He went to Paris and carried on his medical studies, making one secret visit to Ireland to marry Mary Eva Kelly, to whom he was affianced before leaving Ireland. He received an unconditional pardon in 1856, and completed his studies in Dublin, graduating FRCS in 1857. He practiced in Dublin successfully, and in 1862 went to Brisbane, Australia, and became well known as one of its leading physicians. O'Doherty was elected a member of the Queensland Legislative Assembly in 1867. In 1872 was responsible for a Health Act being passed, and was also one of the early opponents of the traffic in cannabis. In 1877 he transferred to the Queensland Legislative Council, and in 1885 resigned as he intended to settle in Europe. In Ireland, O'Doherty was cordially welcomed, and was returned unopposed as Irish Parliamentary Party MP for North Meath to the House of Commons of the United Kingdom in the November 1885 general election, but finding the climate did not suit him he did not seek re-election in 1886, and returned to Brisbane in that year. He attempted to take up his medical practice again but was not successful, and he died in poor circumstances on 15 July 1905. His wife and a daughter survived him. A fund was raised by public subscription to provide for his widow, Mary Ann, a poet, who in her early days was well known as the author of Irish patriotic verse in the nation under the sobriquet Eva. In Australia she occasionally contributed to Queensland journals, and one of her poems is included in a book of Queensland verse. She died at Brisbane on 21 May 1910. Books by Young Irelanders. An Apology for the British Government in Ireland, John Mitchell, O'Donoghue and Amp Company, 1905, 96 pages. Jail Journal. Commenced on board the Shearwater steamer in Dublin Bay. John Mitchell, M.H. Gill and Amp Sons, Limited, 1914, 463 pages. Jail Journal, with continuation in New York and Amp Paris. John Mitchell, M.H. Gill and Amp Son, Limited. The Crusade of the Period. John Mitchell, Lynch, Cole and Amp, Meehan, 1873. Last Conquest of Ireland. John Mitchell, Lynch, Cole and Amp, Meehan, 1873. History of Ireland, from the Treaty of Limerick to the present time. John Mitchell, Cameron and Amp, Ferguson. History of Ireland, from the Treaty of Limerick to the present time. John Mitchell, James Duffy, 1869. Life of Hugh O'Neill. John Mitchell, P.M. Haverty 1868. The Last Conquest of Ireland. John Mitchell, ISBN 1-90555836-4. The Felon's Track. Michael Doheny, M.H. Gillen Amp Sons, Limited 1951. The Volunteers of 1782. Thomas McNevin, James Duffy and Amp Sons. Centenary Edition. Thomas Davis, Sir Charles Gavan Duffy, Keegan Paul Trench, Trubner and Amp Co. Limited 1890. My Life in Two Hemispheres. Sir Charles Gavan Duffy, T. Fisher Unwin, 1898. Young Ireland. Sir Charles Gavan Duffy, Castle, Peter, Galpin and Amp Co. 1880. 4 Years of Irish History 1845 to 1849. Sir Charles Gavan Duffy, Castle, Peter, Galpin and Amp Co. 1888. A Popular History of Ireland, for the earliest period to the emancipation of the Catholics. Thomas Darcy McGee, Cameron and Amp Ferguson. The Patriot Parliament of 1689. Thomas Davis, T. Fisher Unwin, MDCCCXCIII. Charles Gavan Duffy, Conversations with Carlyle. Davis, Poems and Essays Complete. Introduction by John Mitchell, P.M. Haverty, P.J. Kennedy, 9 Fifths Berkeley Street, New York, 1876. Additional reading. The Politics of Irish Literature, from Thomas Davis to W. B. Yeats, Malcolm Brown, Allen and Amp Unwin, 1973. John Mitchell, A Cause Too Many, Aidan Hegarty, Camden Press. Thomas Davis, The Thinker and Teacher, Arthur Griffith, M.H. Gillen Amp Sons Limited, 1922. Brigadier General Thomas Francis Mather, His Political and Military Career. W. F. Lyons, Burns Oates and Amp Washbourne Limited, 1869. Young Ireland in 1848. Dennis Gwynn, Cork University Press, 1949. Repeal and Revolution, 1848 in Ireland. Christine Keneally, Manchester, 2009. Daniel O'Connell, The Irish Liberator. Dennis Gwynn, Hutchinson and Amp Co. Limited. O'Connell, Davis and the Collages Bill. Dennis Gwynn, Cork University Press, 1948. Smith O'Brien and the Secession. Dennis Gwynn, Cork University Press. Matter of the Sword, edited by Arthur Griffith, M.H. Gillen Amp Sons Limited, 1916. Young Irelander Abroad, The Diary of Charles Hart, edited by Brendan O'Cathawa, University Press. John Mitchell, First Felon for Ireland, edited by Brian O'Higgins, 1947. Ross's Recollections 1838–1898 The Lions Press 2004. Labour in Ireland, James Connolly, Fleet Street 1910. A Reconquest of Ireland, James Connolly, Fleet Street 1915. John Mitchell, Noted Irish Lives, Lewis J. Walsh, The Talbot Press Limited 1934. Thomas Davis, Essays and Poems, Centenary Memoir, M.H. Gillen Amp Sons Limited, 1945. Life of John Martin, P.A. Szilard, James Duffy and Amp Co. Limited, 1901. Life of John Mitchell, P.A. Szilard, James Duffy and Co. Limited, 1908. John Mitchell, P.S.O. Hegarty, Maunsell and Amp Company, Limited, 1917. The Fenians in Context, Irish Politics and Amp Society 1848–82, R.V. Comerford, Wolfhound Press, 1998. William Smith O'Brien and the Young Ireland Rebellion of 1848, Robert Sloane, Four Courts Press, 2000. Irish Mitchell, Seamus McCall, Thomas Nelson and Sons, Limited. 1938. Ireland Her Own. T. A. Jackson, Lawrence and Amp. Wishart Limited. 1976. Life and Times of Daniel O'Connell. T. C. Luby, Cameron and Amp. Ferguson Publ. Young Ireland. T. F. O'Sullivan, The Kerry Man Limited. 1945. Irish Rebel, John Devoy and America's Fight for Irish Freedom. Terry Galway, St. Martin's Griffin. 1998. Paddy's Lament, Ireland 1846–1847. Prelude to Hatred. Thomas Gallagher, Poolbeg. 1994. The Great Shame, Thomas Keneally, Anchor Books. 1999. James Fenton Laylaw, Thomas P. O'Neill, Golden Publications. 2003. Charles Gavan Duffy, Conversations with Carlyle, with introduction by Brendan Clifford. Athol Books, Belfast. ISBN 0850341140. Envoy, Taking Leave of Roy Foster, by Brendan Clifford and Julian Herlihy. Aubain Historical Society, Cork. The Falcon Family, or Young Ireland, by M.